PETA and conservatives are finding themselves unusual allies in the fight against animal testing at the National Institutes of Health, and now they have a reason to celebrate.
The last of several experimentation labs that have been accused of brutally experimenting and killing thousands of beagles for nearly half a century has been closed. That's according to the National Institute of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya, who announced Monday that the agency closed the last in-house beagle laboratory on the NIH campus.
We got rid of all the beagle experiments on the NIH campus. So we've put forward a policy to replace animals in research with other technological advances, AI and other tools that actually translate better to human health.
This comes after a recent report from the White Coat Waste Project detailed the lab's history of alleged mistreatment. That mistreatment reportedly included injecting pneumonia-causing bacteria into more than 2,000 beagles' lungs, bleeding them out, forcing the dogs into septic shock for these deadly experiments.
PETA reportedly sent Dr. Bhattacharya flowers after he made the announcement, but now many conservative voices in Congress are pointing the finger at NIH Director Anthony Fauci for starting the labs in the first place. The House Oversight Committee posting on X, quote, "Oversight exposed Dr. Fauci's NIH-funded beagle torture lab in February. Fauci's cruelty lost. The beagles won."
In South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace said, quote, "We've been calling out NIH's beagle torture labs for years. Dr. Fauci spent your money to send puppies to slaughter." So this is a story that first came to my attention when I was hosting this show with Ryan Grimm, who was an animal humanist kind of thinker on the left, and was calling lots of attention to the horrific treatment of these animals, beagles, dogs, by this lab that was backed by Dr. Fauci. So conservatives, have not, I think, historically been so interested or as interested in animal welfare, although there are plenty of conservatives that like their pets and don't think dogs should be experimented on, who became more interested in this story when Fauci became politically salient and became so hated by conservatives. And so there's this alliance now of animal welfare liberals and anti-Fauci conservatives to have Dr. Bhattacharya, who is well liked by both of our factions, take action to stop this. So I'm very glad to hear about this development. Look, I am not such a bleeding heart person that I think there can be no experimentation on animals if it is in the interest of human, if it's absolutely necessary for some, life-saving technology to be invented. I still don't really want to do it on dogs. Dogs are very sentient, beloved man's best friend. But maybe there's some experimentation that has to be done. But as Dr. Bhattacharya was saying, it is not necessary. It's going to be increasingly unnecessary with AI and other technological developments to do this kind of research.
I was so excited to talk about all the activism and bipartisanship that we're seeing here just by getting this lab closed. But leave it up to the critics on the right to find a reason to pin Dr. Fauci with the Democratic Party and say...
It's not unfair, though. He is really...
I know, but we
is a
agree.
Chief advocate of this.
We agree that both Democrats and Republicans came together and activists to make sure that animals are treated humanely. And I think as far as we've progressed in society is as far as our technology should come, especially when it comes around health testing, especially after COVID and all the reports that have come out about animal testing there and how this started, now on the back end of COVID. I think there's a lot of questions and conversations around it that both parties can agree that they made some wrong steps on and some oversight that they weren't looking at on. And I think that that's an important conversation. And the bigger thing is bipartisanship. That's the point of government. I think we've gotten too far away from that people don't even know how to work together, and we're ineffective, probably the most ineffective Congress.
Well, I'm happy to have
in years.
Anti-Fauci bipartisanship. I'm happy to have.
Fauci, listen, sometimes a leader needs to just be vocal and coach you through tough moments, right? It doesn't always mean that you have to get everything right, but keep calm and carry on is a saying for a reason. And I think Fauci was available so much that he helped us keep calm and carry on through something that no one had any experience with in our lifetime.
That's not even why I dislike him. I dislike him for probably causing the pandemic in the first place, right? I mean, he's the foremost public advocate of the exact scientific research that our Energy Department and our FBI and our CIA now believes was the cause of COVID. He was the chief promoter of continuing to do dangerous, reckless gain-of-function experiments. In fact, when the Obama administration ordered scientists, ordered the NIH to stop doing these experiments, except in extreme cases, or you could have some national security exception, Dr. Fauci was the one who personally signed off on continuing to do these experiments in Wuhan, China, where it originates from. So while I disagree with his mask guidance or his social distancing guidance, fine, yeah, that's just disagreement. It goes a step beyond it when the more we learn that COVID probably, not certainly, we haven't definitively proved it, we don't know, that COVID likely originated under circumstances he himself designed. That, to me, puts it beyond just an academic disagreement over what we should have done and into criminal negligence and should be investigated, but Biden pardoned him, so we can't look into that.
Well, some way to look at people who do jobs like Dr. Fauci, which is a large job that he held for years before we knew him as the one associated with the Democratic Party now, Dr.
Well,
Fauci.
he doesn't. That's them. He doesn't have to
He
be. So
doesn't-
Democratic Party
like-
is claiming him as one of their own. They don't have to do that. I'm not forcing them.
I think that people feel that he did a decent job at keeping us calm, as I was saying. But for doing a job this long, this is someone who is in a total different field, right? We're up here as journalists, as analysts. He's literally trying to find the cures and information about some of the world's wildest information and diseases. And if you think that he made a misstep in some way, that's definitely worth a conversation. And maybe worth a poll.
Millions died because he was like, we have to make this virus more lethal and more contagious and find out what happens.
No,
that's crazy. That's like Dr. Frankenstein level hubris.
So you think that he had this master plan to take down the United States with COVID?
No, I don't think it's
what you're saying, because this is a conspiracy theory now.
Never said it was deliberate. Never said it was deliberate. I think scientists engage in reckless experimentation that they knew and that safety experts had warned them could get us all killed, and they did it anyway because they didn't want to be told no. I think that's what happened.
We need to get Dr. Fauci on the show.
One other
to defend himself.
Had him on years ago, and it did not go well. One other point I wanted to going back to the dog experiments before we move on. I've always found this interesting, and COVID made this more salient in my mind. So you can do lab experiments on animals. It's been allowed. But you can't do experiments on people even with their permission. Like this emerged during COVID, right?
Right.
Like how can we get a vaccine as possible for those who want to take it? Well, they had to make sure it's safe. Well, you could, with people's consent, if someone says, I'm a healthy young person with a low risk of a negative COVID outcome, give me the vaccine, deliberately expose me to COVID, pay me, and we'll learn how the vaccine works. You can't do that. It is medically unethical, and you're not allowed to do that under scientific guidelines. But human beings can consent to things. Animals cannot consent. Animals don't have free will. They can't. So we create a system where it's okay to experiment on the thing that cannot consent, but it is not okay to experiment on people with their willing permission. That seems hypocritical to me.
I guess if the overall goal is to preserve human civilization and also, the world that we live in, which comes with a ton of things, nature, animals, I think that human preservation and policy that we have in place generally protects humans first. And so I think that that's probably why. How do we figure this out without testing on something? And I'm
not saying unwilling people. Well, yeah, but I think medical ethics have gone insane. I believe in an ethics of consent. I would never do something to an unwilling person, obviously. But if you consent, then it's really none of the government's business.
So you want them to get rid of that rule versus stop testing on animals? You think that they should just allow people?
I think it's hypocritical to test on animals and say it is always unethical to test on humans even with their permission, because animals cannot give consent to be tested on because they lack free will. They're not human beings.
You're going to have to go argue this one before Congress.
I guess so. Up next, a woman who hurled a racist slur has now raised $500,000 on Give, Send, Go. You've probably heard about this case if you paid attention to social media. We'll discuss it up next.